Welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue working on our super low mile Honda Civic Si. Last time we got our rear body panel cut out and a piece of the floor. We straightened out everything we needed to straighten. Now we're going to cut the rest of that rail and the rest of the floor out of there so that we can get all of our used pieces in. So let's do just that. So in order to avoid having to take that rail out, we found something else to do. Now I would have liked to put this whole piece in as one entire assembly, but I can't. So I need to take certain parts off to get them in there. This piece at the end of our quarter here, you'd normally have on there and then set the quarter over it. Well, since I'm not taking the quarter panel off, I just got to kind of sneak it in there. It slides in between two panels up in the front, and then there's that little tab on the back that slides over it. So we just bent that out of our way and slid this piece in there. Now we're going to clamp it all up, and then we're going to weld it up. Now, I'm not just avoiding taking that rail out. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do it. And I did come up with two different ways that I can get to this two spot welds that are on the inside without having to make extra work for myself. So we'll do that when we get to it. But for right now, we're just going to procrastinate and get some work done at the same time. That's how you stay efficient. Work while you're procrastinating. And now that we have enough clamps in our way that we probably can't see anything we're going to weld, we'll start welding. And we'll move the clamps around because, well, they're going to be in our way. But we need that piece to stay where we put it. Now that we have that corner piece all welded in there, we can put our taillight pocket in. This one's held in with the forbidden icing around this top edge, so we're going to have to put that on. I'm finally going to put my master's in cake decorating to use. I just hope that the federal government finally pays off my student loans, as I have not used that degree at all. After we took the time to make sure we had a nice bead on there, we're going to brush it all out to make sure that we cover up all the bare metal. This stuff adheres to only bare metal, so we want to make sure we cover everything up. We don't want any water getting in there. So we'll smear it all over, cover everything, and we're going to do the same thing on the quarter side. And the two pieces of the bonding agent will stick together and hopefully stay there. It didn't look pretty enough, so Van Gogh here is going to brush a little bit more out. All right, Picasso, time to stick it on the car. So it slides under the quarter and next to that other piece that we just put in earlier and in back of the pockets on the side. So clamp that up. We're going to let it sit for a little bit, and then we'll tack a couple spots in. That's not a fire, that's a controlled burn. A fire is when the controlled burn gets out of control. All right, I put it off long enough. Let's get this rail out of here. We'll use the method I came up with. A couple spot welds in the floor, and then we'll go around the rail. It was the spot welds on the inside there. There's not enough room to get a drill in. So I need to drill them out, but I can't grind off the outer panel because that's the part we need. I need the inner panel out. So I used my angle drill from the outside, went through the holes that I drilled all the way through on the other ones, and drilled the other ones from the inside. Luckily they were close enough that I could move the drill around and get it centered, and the drill bit was just long enough to reach the other side. So we drilled those out of there. Now we're going to use our slide hammer to yank those out of there. There's really no way to get our breaker in there without cutting a lot more of this rail out, which we could have also done if we would have trimmed this rail shorter, almost to the edge of the sleeved part. Then we could have used a finger grinder to grind the inside of it out and slide it out of there. But that would have made the tool experts happy, and I refuse to give in to those people. So we used my method. It works just as well, and it was actually less work. It turns out I missed a spot weld, so we're going to drill that out. There's always one. Then I'm going to stand in the way so you can't see what I'm doing and hammer this out of here. You know what we do with that. We put all our weld-through primer on our new piece, the rear body panel. It's actually made up of about 5 pieces. We didn't need to take it apart. We actually left the rail and the little gusset still attached to that. There's no reason to take it apart. It's just extra work. So we're going to put it all in as one big assembly. Put our weld through primer on the car side, and now it's time to throw our piece up there. These little pieces slide up inside our taillight pockets, so we get those in place. And just kind of turns up in there. Must have got our quarter pretty close. It slides right in. Now we just need to get our rail tucked inside the other rail that's on the car. That's going to take a little work. Once we get it started, we don't want it backing out of there. Well, we'll take our time. We're really pushing our luck that it's going to stay up there. Use our bumper installation tool. Knock this piece in there. We need to slide it up underneath the taillight pocket. It slipped out of there. And I don't want to take it back out of the rail, so we'll just use our scraper to pry the taillight pocket over the body panel. And once it's under there, we can slide it up. Our passenger side stayed where it belonged, so we're just going to move it up to where it's supposed to be. Everything looks like it's good. We just need to go in a little bit further. So we'll hammer it in. Slides into our rail. And we'll slide it into where it belongs. And we'll put a few tack welds in it just to hold it in place. We'll throw our taillights in it. We're going to test fit everything. But we really weld everything together. It'll be a lot harder to move it then. We're just going to screw our taillights in finger tight with a couple bolts. We don't need to tighten it all down and put all the bolts in. Just enough to hold them in place so we can close everything, make sure our gaps are right. We'll throw our bumper on. This bumper's damaged. We're not going to end up using it. But it'll give us our gaps, the damages on the bottom of it. Flip it into our body panel. We'll use our bumper installation tool for its intended purpose. All of our screw holes lined up. Clip it into our quarter. And we didn't put the bracket on this side, but it fits our quarter like it should, so we're not going to worry about it. And close our deck lid. Check our gaps. Everything fits, so we're ready to take it apart. So you got to be quick with this deck lid. You pull the lever and you have to jump behind it because it's more of a catapult than it is a deck lid release. It's set up with the torsion on there to be weighted for the spoiler and the trunk lining, and that stuff's not on there. So it opens a little violently, and I have visions of it going through the back window. So you just pull the lever and put your hand there to slow it down. It's going to get even worse when I take the rest of the weight out of there. But once we put all the stuff back on it, it should open like it's supposed to. Now we can take everything apart. Pull all these parts back off since everything fits. We'll finish welding it up. Normally I wouldn't have welded all those welds, but I was pretty confident it was going to fit. I would have just used self-tapping screws, but I didn't feel like making extra holes. So I took the risk and welded it up. Turns out it fit, luckily. So once all of our parts are off, we can go ahead and finish welding everything up. And we'll go take our deck lid apart. We need to get our spoiler off of here because Scott's Honda Emporium didn't have a SI deck lid with a spoiler. So regular deck lid is the same, just doesn't have the spoiler on it. Our spoiler is still good, so we can reuse it. But we need to put all our holes in there. There's a couple screws on the outside, a couple nuts on the inside, and a bunch of little clips that clip in. So we're going to take off the receiving side of our clips. A couple tabs you just push in. Get your finger under them, and then pop them out of there. And you'll know you're done when you stab yourself with the pick. Until then, the job is not done. Takes a little time to not break the clips, but I don't want to have to buy these. I'm poor. And we got to make sure we take the gasket out with it. This one's stuck to the deck lid. carefully peel it off of there or it will tear. And we'll put it back on our little clip. So we know where to find it. A couple more clips. Pop those out of there. Still haven't stabbed my finger yet. I can't possibly be done. And now we have not used our favorite tool quite enough in this build, so we're going to bring it out and trim a little line on the top here. We need to get the outer skin off of this thing. Alright, safety experts, you were warned. It's time to do some damage and get some work done with our air-powered fire-making death wheel. We're just going to grind the outer edge of our skin. We're trying to grind right through it. So it's basically metal that's bent over around the lip. We're going to grind right around the edge of it, and it'll leave the inside piece on the inside, and our outside piece will be untouched. We're going to grind both sides. If you've ever done a door skin, this is the easiest way to take the door skin off when you're changing it. This is a trunk skin, same idea. Although there's not very many places you can buy trunk skins that I know of. As if I hadn't traumatized the safety experts enough, now I'm using this fire-making death wheel with just one hand. That's right, there are no guards on this thing, there are no safeties. It was built back in the 70s when we just got work done and didn't worry about, well, if you were coming home or not. So we're going to grind right along that lip across the front here. You can see it start to separate. That's how you know you went far enough. Now we can take our scraper and we can peel off this little strand that's left of our skin from where it was bent over. And if we ground all the way through, it should peel right off. So far, so good. It is glued on there. That's what's holding it on. Got seam sealer in it. I will grab onto it with no gloves just to really freak out any safety experts that are still remaining. And now we can start heating up the bonding agent that's on the inside, the factory forbidden icing. There's also some little dots of glue all over it that hold it to the braces. So we're just going to heat it up until the glue releases. We'll keep our scraper in there with a little tension on it, and it'll just pop off as we go down the line. Just got to get it to just the right temperature and it falls right off. We don't want to just pull it off and bend it. I don't want to end up mangling it. It will come off, but this way we can get it off of here without doing any more damage. That white stripe is the tape that they used at the auction to seal this thing off because the deck lid wouldn't close. So they had it all taped up. Keep water out. Didn't work very well. The trunk was full of water. Not a spare tire, but it did have an indoor swimming pool. So we made it all around the outer edge. That's fully released. Now we just have the little dots of foam that are holding it to the braces inside. We're just going to heat it up and pull out on it just a little bit with our scraper until they pop off. Most of them are already off of there. The car that hit it kind of popped them off. So our skin is free. We'll scrape off the chiclets that stayed on the skin side from the car hitting it. All the ones that we heated up stayed on the trunk side. These things do not taste good. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Worst chiclets ever. Alright, we got them all off of there. Now we can set our template on top of our new deck lid. We could have made one, but this isn't that difficult. And it gets us exact. We don't have to worry about messing anything up. We'll just line up our corners. There is one dimple for the outermost studs in the spoiler. So I could have drilled those out and then kind of measured off of that, but this way works out quite well. So we're just going to scribe our circles. A lot of people ask me why I always scribe lines. Well, if you use a marker, it
doesn't make sharp edges. The lines are thicker. The scribe lines are very thin, and you can tell exactly how big you need the hole to be. So it's more precise. That's why I don't use markers. Now with our template out of the way, we can start drilling our holes. This one on the outside is the one that has the dimple underneath to tell me where to drill it, had I wanted to do it that way. So I could open the deck lid up and check and make sure it ended up in that dimple, but I have all the confidence in the world that this is going to work. So we're going to set our spoiler on there and make sure that all of our holes line up with the holes we drilled. We only drilled 1/8 holes, so if everything lines up, we don't have to move them around. Everything did, so now we're going to drill our correct size holes. Now we're going to hit them with a metal file just to remove the burrs off the edges, make them nice and flat. We have a couple dents in our deck lid that we're not going to have to fix because they're covered up with our spoiler. We do have one hole that we have to drill for our light wire. That one's going to be a little bigger. We're going to have to grab a hole saw for that. So everything's looking good, except for this one. We want to do this before we paint it, make sure all those holes get painted. So we drilled the hole for our wire, set our spoiler on there. And this is not just for looks. If I hadn't put this on, this car would have no third brake light. And what good is a lawnmower if you don't have a handle? So we had to put it on. So all of our holes lined up, and we covered up a few dents in the deck lid. Sometimes things just work out. I already used the frame rack to lift it up so we can pull the tire off. And we almost ended up with the Civic on its side. It had to settle on the frame rack. It's a little off center, but we're not clamping it up, so it doesn't really matter. Now we're going to cut off our zip ties here. Normally you don't need a pair of side cutters to get these fenders off, but in this case we do. Not only did they cheap out on the repair, but they cheaped out on the cheap repair method. They used the zip ties that aren't UV proof, so they were pretty brittle and just snapped right off. We'll bolt our mud flap, and we'll start pulling a few push pins that are still left in this thing out. A couple zip ties. That one's already broken. A couple more push pins on the inside. And we can pull our liner down. There's 2 clips in the back. You can release, well, there's that other filler back there. There's 2 clips in the back for this wheel liner. So we're going to unbolt the bottom of the fender, and then we can get to the back of those clips, try and save them. You have to squeeze the tabs on the back, so now we can pull the fender out, get to them. Or lose patience, destroy them, and go find new ones. Whatever works. Either way, that liner's coming off. So now we'll pull this little closeout panel off the top since we have our fender liner out. Maybe I saved those clips. Maybe they died in a massacre. You may never know. We'll pop our closeout panel off the front, and now we can see all of our fender bolts and our headlight bolt. There's one more under the cowl screen. We don't need to take it off. We'll just lift it up a little bit, sneak our impact in there, and unbolt it. And hope we don't drop the screw down into Narnia. There's one more bolt in the bottom bracket underneath the headlight. And our headlight's held in by nothing but thoughts and prayers. Fender out a little bit so we don't scratch up the door any more than it already is. And there's one last bolt at the top of the fender in the back. Now I'll just wiggle our fender out. Some ramen noodles up here. Must have been from the last guy who was repairing it. We'll get some of those leaves out of there. That's good. We don't want to make it too clean. They won't know it was my car after that. I'll put our tire back on and crank it on with an impact just to really upset the internet. And we'll give Mr. Spotty a spin. Now we're going to set it back on its wheels, because you always want to put it on its wheels whenever you're putting body panels on if you can. So that's what we're doing. Slide it in behind our bumper and our headlight. And there's one tab in the back that we'll try to get underneath the door. It was pretty bent from when it was sitting outside the car. It's not very strong, so just the weight of the fender bent it, so we're going to have to straighten it out. I got close, but we'll bolt it in. Let's close our door and see how it fits. A little far away, so we're going to push it back in there. We're bending that bracket a little bit as we do it. We'll get our gap right on the bottom of the door, bolt in the bottom of the fender. These things are made of Play-Doh, so you can pretty much move them anywhere you want. Bolt in the top of our fender. Put our closeout panel down and close the hood and see what our gaps look like. Not too bad. It's a little low in the front, but we could just turn up the volume on the rubber baby buggy bumper and raise it up. Back's got to come up just a tiny bit. But our gap is even all the way down, so everything's where it belongs. Except for that headlight. We're going to have to do something with that. Like, throw it in the pile, because there's no brackets left on it. It was just sitting in there. Our gap across the back of our door is good. Across the bottom of the window and on the A-pillar. So now we're going to align what the factory didn't. We need to raise the driver's side up quite a bit more than the passenger side. Go look at your Honda Civic. It probably has the same issue. And if it bothers you, this is how you fix it. Just put a little weight on that hinge. Turn the volume up on our rubber baby buggy bumper. And see if we got it. We'll have to go a little bit more in the back. Didn't want to overdo it. It's easy to move the hood up. It's a little more difficult to move it down. So if we don't go too far, we don't have to worry about down. A little bit more. Now we're going to put a little bit more pressure on it. More volume on that bumper. And now our gap and our height are perfect. If only Honda had done that. So now we'll head to the back. We're going to get our deck lid ready for the painter. Take off what's left of this Civic nameplate. Most of it had deteriorated. There's a little bit of glue still left on the V and the front C. We'll pull off our Honda emblem. Same thing, the glue is pretty much non-existent. It was just the alignment pins that were holding it in. Now we can pull our taillights out. A few screws on the back. Unscrew the other one. We can push in the tabs for our finish panel. Just squeeze the two clips on either side. Put a little tension on them and they pop out. There's one screw that holds it in. It also holds in the lock. But ours isn't coming out because, well, it's rusty. We got it halfway undone. Slide the finish panel out of there. Now we can get our lights out. There's one clip underneath that finish panel. That's why I have to take that off first. And a little wiggle and pull and the lights come out. I'll put some vice grips on the little metal tab that's supposed to be in our finish panel. Unbolt it. Run it back and forth so we don't end up snapping off in there. We didn't destroy our finish panel too much. We'll be able to put that little clip back in there. Put the screw in there so I don't lose it. And now we'll unbolt the lock. There's one bolt that goes in from the outside. And we'll push it out of there with our hammer. rubber grommets kind of glued in there. They got our license plate lights. Just squeeze the tabs, pop them out. And put this tab on the inside. Make it difficult to get to. It's actually the same light on both sides, so. Which is kind of nice. If you buy a used deck lid, you end up with 4 lights. So if you got a broken one and they're both the left side, you can use the right side one on the left side instead of having to go buy one. Which all manufacturers will do that.
In case you couldn't tell, this was all prior damage, this crease right here. You could tell because it was spray painted and because, well, it didn't really line up with the rest of the accident. The damage back here from this end being curled down, we basically just had a little dimple here. And this edge here and one little buckle that I pushed out here, that is all just from this. That's why I didn't change the quarter like I did on the Lexus. The Lexus, this was all folded in. This is just previous damage that if they had actually wanted to make it look better, they would have just bonded it up, you know, pull out the dent, little skim coat of Bondo, and good to go. So that's what we're gonna do this time. There's a couple door dings up here, we'll get those. We'll fix this, and this will be all ready to go. Well, I won't, but somebody will. My days of body work are over. Hate that stuff. So that's as far as we're gonna go on the Civic here for today. We got the fender on it, we got our body panel in there and all welded up. It's time for the body work to get done and some of the paint work. So my part here is done. So I'm gonna take off. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon. And by take off, I mean go work on something else. Like this thing right here. I'm not gonna show it to you.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no